Hi, good evening, and welcome to my daily live session on various topics for execution excellence from my toolkit. And this week has been the topic stakeholder mapping. And before I get into that, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Dinakar. I'm the founder of Samutana and the inventor of DoHow, a methodology for achieving amazing outcomes, challenging goals in companies wherein we start with getting the teams aligned, and after that get the teams to develop their personal, professional, and people competencies, achieving the amazing outcomes or challenging goals. And in doing so, they would, like I said, develop their competencies, and we've been able to deliver both the development of competencies and bottom line for the last 8 years to various clients. We have the option of delivering face to face or virtually, and also the option of you using DoHow as a service, DoHow platform as a service. So these are the three options, and that's my basic activity which I do. And every day I've been talking about various tools. And if you want to know more about what we do, please visit dinakarmurthy.com or write an email to me. My email is dinakar@samuthana.com. So, with that very brief introduction, let me directly jump into the topic of the day, which is to talk about the stakeholder mapping and more specifically the pros and positives of stakeholder mapping. On Monday, I explained or give an introduction to stakeholder mapping, which is basically identifying the people who are interested in your company's well-being and who are stakeholders of your company. Typically, five groups, which would be customers, people, shareholders, suppliers, and society. And these, I said, have to be in some way or the other identified by name. Only then it becomes meaningful, because we need to understand what are the needs and expectations of the stakeholders or stakeholder groups. Again, as a name would be the most important thing. Without that, it becomes difficult to place anybody, place a stakeholder. It becomes very illusionary, very imaginary. Otherwise, when it is a name, then it becomes very practical, very down to earth. And that's something which I said. And after that, on Tuesday, I spoke about the application of stakeholder mapping. One was for current reality, to understand who the stakeholders are so that the current reality can be assessed based on the perspective of the stakeholders. Why is it required? Because the idea of any company, any flourishing company, ever flourishing company, as described in TOC, or a world class company, as I keep talking about, or a company with sustainable, profitable growth as per any business excellence model, the key is to ensure consistent, improving value creation for all the stakeholders. That's the magic of any company of that kind. And to be able to do that, it's important to understand who the stakeholders are. Therefore, the first step of current reality is to understand the stakeholders by mapping them. The next area of application would be in the area of reporting and reviewing, where we need to understand who are the stakeholders so that they keep getting appraised, and they're informed of the latest situation, the updates, in a meaningful way, in a very concise and succinct way, so that they have the idea as to what's happening, and they're clear and delighted with the value creation that the organization is bringing to them. Like I said, five stakeholder groups: customers, people, shareholders, then suppliers, and society. Now, yesterday I spoke about the negatives and also spoke about the mitigation measures. The first one was to ensure that the missing out of important stakeholders is mitigated by ensuring that there is a diverse team, and to ensure that the diversity is ensured by making sure that you have an external facilitator for the stakeholder mapping exercise, so that the external facilitator can think of the necessary functions and necessary people to ensure sufficient diversity because of his diverse experience. And then I said the process may be academic. It's important that you understand what is the benefit of stakeholder mapping in your various literature, is what I said, as a mitigation activity. And then the last one was just the first step is very critical, and therefore it's important to also define what happens next after the stakeholder mapping in the exercise of stakeholder mapping, which I said can be done better with an external facilitator. And because this is the base of foundation, it's really like the bottom concrete which one would do the screed in any foundation. When you're building the house, the first thing you do is dig up the excavate the site, and after that you first pour base screed. It's called a screed. It's a very diluted, or I would say very flowing concrete. It's not very viscous concrete. It's a very flowing kind of a concrete with more amount of water at the bottom of the foundation before the pillars are erected, before the uh, RCC is done, or even before the foundation stones are laid. The first is to put a screed at the bottom of the foundation where the excavation is done, and that screed is something what I would analogically compare with the stakeholder mapping. Now, with that very quick recap, now let me talk about the pros and the positives of stakeholder mapping. One of the most important thing, I believe the most what should I say, beneficial aspect of stakeholder mapping is to build a consensus and a common understanding of the ecosystem of a business amongst the key players. And that's something which is really outstanding, right? Because unless there is a common understanding and a consensus on the ecosystem of a business system, of a business, it is almost impossible to achieve any progress. In all my assignments so far, both as a corporate executive and as a consultant and expert in various areas, I have seen that my clients, my situations, the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge is to have a common understanding of all the key stakeholders. Once we have got the common understanding of the key players, then all the other things fall in place, because that is the core of achieving exceptional performance. I want to just take a few minutes and relate one example. See, normally when there is a crisis, let us say there is a COVID crisis, or there was a flood, there was a fire, there is not much to be done. Everybody understands the common reality quite uniformly, and people start helping out, people start supporting, because it's visible, it's quite evident, there is nothing to be explained. Whereas if you're talking about something in a company where you're looking at the profitability not being good, first of all, the numbers are obscure, you don't know what the numbers are. Most of them don't know what the numbers are. Or if you're looking at the revenue, you don't know who the customers are, who the customer segments are, where the revenue is coming. All these things are very obscure. So with that situation, the understanding as to what the current reality is extremely different, is very different among the key players. When that happens, then you are in for a disaster, or you are in for extremely mediocre performance, because people don't know what to do and they are trying to do their best in their own way because they understood the reality in the way they did. And that is not the reality, that is the actual reality. Therefore, it's important that all these key players discuss, come to a common understanding of the reality. Only then can magical performance happen in companies. That is the biggest challenge which I have seen, and the biggest need of any company, any team, any organization. And for that, Duho is one of the solutions which does that very quickly. It takes only about 1 hour to 2 hours to establish that common understanding, because it's only a question of debating on specific topics to really come to that common understanding. That is the first thing. Second is, that is the biggest benefit of stakeholder mapping, because when you do that, you start debating, start discussing, then you come to the common understanding of the reality and the ecosystem of the business. Second is identifying the people and segments to focus. This is again very important, which is a huge benefit, because then you would know who are the key people whom we have to talk about, creating value for them so that they are delighted and the business prospers. So that's something which is very important, to understand who the people are and the key segments. So segmentation happens naturally, because everybody cannot be grouped into the same basket. People will be different, the needs are different. So that is the next benefit of stakeholder mapping. And the third benefit of stakeholder mapping is to establish the needs and expectations of these people and segments whom we have identified. Now, with these three benefits, I believe stakeholder mapping is a very important aspect of any business, to be really able to understand and get a common understanding of who the stakeholders are and what their needs and expectations are across the organization with all the key players. When I say key players, they're generally the top management. Of course, they are the key players because they're the ones who are taking decision. Then there are also a lot of informal leaders within the organization, informal influencers within the organization. They also need to be roped in so that everybody has a common understanding. Because most of the time, these informal influencers have a different perspective of the picture, different understanding of the picture. Therefore, though they seem to be doing good for the organization in their own way, they may be causing more harm than any benefit. Therefore, it's important to rope them in also and establish a common understanding. For that, stakeholder mapping is it's an outstanding tool to really be able to do that. So now, with that, I come to the end of today's talk on pros and positives. Tomorrow, I invite you. This time, I'll also post it in my WhatsApp groups to come and join me by clicking dinakarmurthy.com/live tomorrow at 8:30, so that you can debate and you can discuss, you can present your experiences with stakeholder mapping. And this time, I believe we would have some audience, some people who can discuss with me, who can come along live. It will be a live session, so don't really worry about that. It's not going to be a difficult thing. I started just like that, and now I've been doing it quite some time now. It's not going to really cause anything negative, and only you will get more experience and more. You become you get more clarity of thought. See, I remember a very old saying that to learn you need to share. You know, sharing is a fantastic way of learning, and that's been a tremendous journey for me. A very good experience. And if you are not doing live, then the thoughts will not get formed naturally, and you are able to edit it. Therefore, the clarity of thought will not come at all. If you need to get clarity of thought, live is the only way, and that's the only way to learn. You know, so I welcome you to join me tomorrow at 8:30, dinakarmurthy.com/live. Until then, for those of you in India, have a nice evening. For those of you outside India, have a great day ahead, and see you tomorrow at 8:30 for a live discussion on stakeholder mapping. Thanks a lot and goodbye.